Crystal Tower information, Whiskey 2153 Zulu, wind 060 at 5.
076 Mike Juliet, this is departure radar contact.
Hazardous weather information from Minnesota available on flight service frequency.
You've dialed in the Flying Midwest podcast, connecting aviators from across America's heartland, sharing news, information, and events from around the region.
Calling Nancy 53 on Overflying Tower, roger, turn left heading 070, runway 9er, clear for takeoff.
Sit back, relax, and join our crew for some hangar talk as we discuss a wide variety of regional aviation topics.
Archer 71143, flying 5, runway 28 left, quick takeoff, left hand southbound.
And now, from our home at the Anoka County Blaine Airport, our checklist is complete, and we're ready for departure for another episode of the Flying Midwest podcast.
Contact departure, every flight.
What's going on, everyone? Jim here with the Flying Midwest podcast. So glad you're able to join us. On this episode, we talk to Air Traffic Controller Jack Parkin as he answers your questions about air traffic control. And as always, news, information, and events from around the region, with some friendly hangar talk along the way. So strap in, and let's take off into this episode of the Flying Midwest podcast.
Hey guys,
Hey, Trevor.
Trevor here, Flying Midwest podcast. Here we have Maddie and Jim.
Hey.
What's
And
going
Maddie
on?
is a brand new graduate. She's
Yay.
drinking a little bit
I
of
graduated kindergarten
wine.
with my
Celebrating
bachelor's
wine.
degree in
Wait.
aviation.
Those are totally different things. However, kindergarten does involve coloring in between the lines. Being a pilot involves flying the magenta line, which is a colored line. Is that the same thing?
Yes, basically.
That's a stretch, isn't it?
No, most pilots I know are kindergartners.
So is there anything else we want to say about that? Like, congratulations, Maddie.
Thank you. I am certified smart. The
To go
college
with-
said so.
The
To be
most expensive piece of paper you will ever own.
I think my CFI certificate may surpass that, actually. Well, CFI, like all the other ones, I think that was more expensive than all of my college.
To be fair,
To be fair,
To be fair.
your certificate is plastic. So it's the
It
most
Oh,
expensive.
here
was
we
a
go.
piece of paper as a temporary certificate. So
okay, here we go.
I'm sorry, I will reserve that comment for when I have my MEI temporary certificate, and it
There
will
you
be
go.
paper. Therefore, being the most expensive piece of paper I own.
Fair enough. You over the COVID yet, Trevor?
Brain fog, cannot compute. A little bit of cough, yeah.
A good thing you're in a really high demand and stress school then. If you've got the
Oh,
brain
yeah.
fog still.
You can definitely tell.
My boyfriend had COVID last August and has just started, like as of this week, gotten over some of his brain fog.
Yeah, I've heard that's a thing.
I have it, but I'm already, a little bit foggy up there anyway. So.
Little airhead.
Honestly, and I hope the FAA is not listening and getting any bright ideas. I'm surprised they haven't said more about COVID after effects and how it affects your performance as a pilot and the brain fog and your medical stuff.
I think they did. They did
I'm
in
just
that one time.
surprised-
They're like, if you have COVID, you're grounded, basically.
Right.
And everybody's like, everybody's getting COVID. No more pilots. And then the FAA is like, okay, never mind.
Never mind.
Never mind. We
Just
need
kidding.
those.
Well,
I'm just surprised that they haven't said more since then. I remember that, but it just, I don't know.
here's the problem with that though is COVID's going to affect everybody differently.
Yep.
And if you have shot lungs, because say you had pneumonia, if you're flying a high altitude aircraft, you're not going to be able to perform. Your time of useful consciousness is going to go down. Your hypoxia symptoms are going to start developing a lot sooner. And it's going to be like you smoke 20 packs a day for 20 years and trying to fly at 5,000 feet at night. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
how do they waiver that?
How do you even detect that? Like, for some people, it's hard.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why is they're like, ground yourself if you think you can't fly.
I think
That's going to happen, but
this goes more towards just an overall medical reform topic in the first place that we don't have nearly enough time to discuss it. I don't think we will, but
no,
but
I don't even think an entire podcast episode could cover that.
There's just so many different things that affect people in so many different ways that I think it's, I don't know. I don't like the idea of some of these blanket statements on some of these medical conditions, but we will go down that road maybe another day because we don't have 6 hours to discuss this today.
Only 6?
I was being...
Yeah. It hits home for a lot of people. Most pilots.
And frankly, there is another podcast that's out there. I don't want to spoil too much of that yet that I'm trying to reach out to that does cover some of these more sensitive topics towards the FAA and medicals and restrictions and things like that. So I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to spoil too much in case this doesn't pan out, but I'd really like to talk to them more and get their take on some stuff. So more in the future, I suppose. All right.
Okay.
To the news.
Starting off in Kansas today, the new KC-46 Alpha completes a record 24.2 hour flight. This was on May 5th and 6th, and a KC-46 Alpha Pegasus tanker from the 22nd Air Refueling Wing in Kansas set a record-setting 24.2 hour flight from McConnell Air Force Base in Kansas. And this is considered by the Air Force to be the longest duration flight in Air Mobility Command's history. So the purpose of this flight was to test the capabilities of this new refueling platform, as it represents a key factor in the global reach of the U.S. Air Force. They planned a lot for this. They had a lot of tools that they were using to detect fatigue and to detect mental acuity during the flight. There were 6 pilots. There were 3 teams of 2. There were 2 that rotated on 4-hour shifts and 1 that came in as needed. There were 3 boom operators, a photojournalist, and a physician assistant. During this flight, the Pegasus performed dry contacts with another KC-46, refueled 4 F-35s from the Marines, and then was refueled by another KC-46. It traveled about 9,000 miles and completed its flight back at McConnell Air Force Base. The data collected from this flight will be used to determine the feasibility, limitations, and potential risks as far as the unique benefits of the Pegasus for long-duration flights.
Another step forward for that platform.
Yeah, actually very interesting with the fatigue testing.
Yeah, that's got to be a hell of a flight. So sticking with the theme of the United States Air Force, the first T-7A RedHawk has rolled off the production line at Boeing's facility at Lambert International Airport in St. Louis, Missouri. This is the first of 351 aircraft to be delivered to the United States Air Force as part of a larger $9.2 billion contract that was awarded to Boeing. The production aircraft is going to have an actual physically red-painted tail, symbolic of the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II. The name of the RedHawk, that the aircraft is named after itself, is derived from the Curtiss P-40 Warhawks that were flown by the 99th Fighter Squadron in the U.S. Army Air Forces, which was the first African-American fighter squadron. This will be used as a training aircraft by Air Education Training Command to train future generations of Air Force pilots.
Those of you that have been around the Midwest, you guys have probably heard of the B-25 Miss Mitchell. This aircraft is actually based out of St. Paul, Minnesota, and it was actually planning on doing a flight as part of Raid 22 in South Dakota. Now, the aircraft, unfortunately, they have to postpone it because of an engine issue, or they have to pull the engine, do an overhaul on it, some sort of maintenance issue. But the B-25 was in support of kind of like the remembrance of the Doolittle raid, which was the first raid on Tokyo after Japan bombed us at Pearl Harbor. This was actually a very big event. Brigadier General Jimmy Doolittle led this bombardment in Tokyo. So this flight, Raid 22, was supposed to happen and conclude for the Rapid City Ellsworth Air Show. Well, fortunately, without the B-25, the air show is still going to go on as planned now. So this airplane has a lot of history behind it. The one legacy for this aircraft is that it had no crew fatalities during all of its missions, which is a rare accomplishment in World War II.
As I looked at a bit of this Raid 22 schedule, it's this kind of cool trek across South Dakota, ending at Ellsworth Air Force Base, and they have that as the location that they go to. Ellsworth is known as the home of the Raiders. 3 of Doolittle's squadron is actually called Ellsworth home.
All right. Boeing is moving its headquarters from Chicago, Illinois to Arlington, Virginia, as the crisis-plagued U.S. plane maker works to repair relationships with customers, federal regulators, and lawmakers. This move, which will be across the Potomac River from the U.S. Capitol, will also include plans by Boeing to develop a research and technology hub in the area. So they said, the Boeing president and chief executive officer said that the region makes strategic sense for their headquarters, given its proximity to customers and stakeholders, and its access to world-class engineering and technical talent. There was reports last October saying that cost cuts and a more hands-on corporate culture raised questions about Boeing's future in Chicago. So Boeing said that it will still maintain a significant presence at its Chicago location and the surrounding region. It does say that Boeing did move its headquarters to Chicago in 2001 after leaving Seattle, which was its home for 85 years.
Should we stay in Chicago?
Yeah, let's stay in
Sure.
Chicago.
Let's stay in
I hate Chicago, but let's stay in Chicago.
Well, we won't stay here long then. So back on Thursday, May 5th, United Airlines has confirmed that a passenger on United Flight 2874 from San Diego to Chicago disembarked the aircraft a little short of the gate itself. A passenger had actually pulled the rear emergency exit over the right wing and then proceeded to exit the aircraft and slide down the wing onto the ramp area itself. Law enforcement was able to locate that individual and place them into custody. The reasoning for them deplaning is not yet known, but I'm sure the investigation is underway. Could it be that, as Brian Turner suggested, maybe it was open and he just got sucked up?
Oh, jeez.
It has come up more and more lately, has it not? Trevor Jacob, Red Bull, now this guy, sucked right up.
A true danger. We all got to watch out.
Brian, if we jumped the gun here and beat you to the punch on this story, deepest apologies. We have copyrighted this bit for this specific article, and you can't do it now.
You just released a Trent Palmer video. I haven't seen it, though.
I think it's pretty funny.
Oh, I'll have to
gotta
watch
see
that. I haven't seen that
I
one
have
yet.
to watch it.
I'm not going to spoil anything.
Somebody shared it as like real news, and
course they
I always
did.
laugh when that happens because that's happened a couple times where somebody shared it as like a legitimate thing, and it's just like, yes, it's just Brian.
All right, going to Missouri, Columbia Regional Airport. So they had a charitable fly-in that we've talked about a few weeks back. Pilots from across Missouri landed their small aircraft at this Columbia Regional Airport for a free breakfast and fundraiser. Now, this charitable fly-in was actually part of Rainbow House. Rainbow House, for those of you that are really familiar with it, it's Children's Emergency Shelter, Regional Child Advocacy Center, Homeless Youth Outreach Program. While there's a lot that goes into this, it's actually a pretty cool event. Cole Finley, one of the air traffic controllers, says, "I could not be any happier with how it turned out. Everyone came in from all corners of the state." It kind of goes without saying that those in general aviation, a lot of us general aviation pilots, we are very charitable. We have two favorite F words, free and food. But then when it comes to free and food, we also like to donate. And at the end of the day, pilots who flew and end up raising about $1,200 for Rainbow House. Many pilots brought their families along for the ride. And hopefully, Finley hopes that kids see the positive impact that can be made in not just aviation, but in the world in general. Good on them. Good on Columbia Regional Airport on hosting this charitable fly-in, and we're looking forward to seeing it next year again.
So this is the second fly-in event that Cole Finley has done. We talked about one on the last episode where it was a food drive fly-in. Now he's got this next fly-in that has benefited this advocacy center for youth. And Cole looks like he's doing some really great things with these fly-ins. So I'm just going to put it out there. Cole, if you're listening, we would love to talk to you and pick your brain about the success of these events and just talk to you a little bit more about it. So reach out to us. We want to talk to you. Otherwise, we're going to hunt you down and we'll find you, and then we'll ask you really nicely to come on the podcast. It's time to talk about some events. Coming up the weekend of June 4th and 5th, Chippewa Valley Air Show in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. They're going to feature the likes of the Blue Angels.
Boo.
Don't boo them. They're still a good team. It doesn't matter that it's a different service. They're going to have the Blue Angels, and just for Trevor, to satisfy your Air Force need, The F-16 Viper demo team will be there as well as a number of other airshow acts, commemorative Air Force, and static displays to your heart's desire. Ticket information is going to be in the link that we'll post in the show notes. And again, that's June 4th and 5th at the Chippewa Valley Regional Airport in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
All right. June 11th and 12th in Chesterfield, Missouri, the Spirit of St. Louis Air Show and STEM Expo, which is presented by Boeing, is scheduled for those dates, and the times are on their website. All the tickets for this event will be online only. There will be no tickets at the gate, so make sure if you want to go that you order tickets before you go. Featured at this event, the U.S. Navy Blue Angels, again, the NASA Super Guppy, which is pretty neat. Also going to be seen are a host of aircraft, including P-51s, Corsair, F-35, Growlers, Spitfires, Hurricanes, Mosquitoes, Matt Youngkin in his Beech 18, Yankee Lady, the B-17, B-29 Doc, the Phillips 66 team, a Privateer, a B-25, an Avenger, and the U.S. Army Black Daggers. Other events are also to be announced. So there is a lot going on in this air show. It's going to be really fun, I think. You can purchase your tickets at spirit-airshow.com/tickets, and that will also be in the show notes.
And a partridge in a pear tree. That's the only thing you missed.
Yeah, I think so.
Trevor, now I know you're upset about the Blue Angels. I think to make it up to you, I'm going to give you the opportunity to read the Thunderbird one.
Oh, thanks. I got Nebraska right here.
No, thanks. Well, fine.
Wow.
If it makes you feel better, there's an air show that the Thunderbirds are going to be at in the Midwest on June 4th and 5th as well. They will be at the Fort Wayne Air Show, Fort Wayne, Indiana. That'll be at
the Midwest.
It is, well.
Good grief, Trevor.
Every episode he's got to say it, so I'm going to allow it. This is going to occur at the 122nd Fighter Wing Air National Guard Base. It's going to be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. both days, and admission is free. Now, just like the other air show where they allowed the Air Force to participate with the Blue Angels, the Navy will be participating with the U.S. Navy F-18 Super Hornet Rhino demo team, and there will be a number of other static displays as well as performers that will participate in that air show as well.
Okay, let's actually go to the Midwest.
Okay, let's do it.
Free breakfast to all, going to Grant, Nebraska. Saturday, June 18th, 2022. From the hours of 9 a.m. 0900 to 1100, Grant's Lions Club is going to be offering coffee and donuts. There will also be Young Eagle flights from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. A lot of vendor displays, agriculture, aircraft, water drop. Ooh, that actually sounds like a lot of fun. Especially if it's going to be really hot. Maybe they can dump the water on the crowd.
There you go.
Cool them off.
Knock some kids over.
Right?
Oh, that'd be so funny. Wow.
Everyone is welcome. It says 11 a.m. dedication of AWAS in the name of Leon Kumor.
All right. Wednesday, June 8th, 2022 at 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time at Yankee Air Museum at Willow Run Airport. Join the museum for the drive-in air display at the airport. Gates will open at 4:30 p.m. This is featuring the CF-18 demonstration team. Food trucks will be on site and bring as many people as your car can legally hold. There will be Huey helicopter rides available for the show, and purchase is on site only. You can get tickets at the website that is going to be in the show notes.
You guys ready for our guest this week?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, all of our listeners out there in podcast land, you've probably heard of Kennedy Steve, and you've probably heard of Boston John. We have Waterloo Jack tonight from the Air Traffic Control Tower / Approach / Radar Facility in Waterloo, Iowa. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you.
Can we call you Waterloo Jack?
Sure, go for it.
I mean, I just did, but
yeah, don't really have control over it.
Ring to it.
Is this going to mess you up when you go back to work and people have listened to this podcast?
Hopefully nobody listens to it now.
Well, that's what we typically expect too, but sometimes people listen. So welcome, Jack. We're really happy to have you here and to talk about some ATC topics tonight.
Thank you. And I appreciate the hosting a federal air traffic controller. It's not too common that a lot of people are really comfortable with that. But to start things out, I know the populace and my employer would appreciate that all of the opinions tonight on this broadcast are my opinion and not the FAA's. I know there's been a lot of FAA in the news recently. Just want to emphasize that they're my employer and everything that I say is all on my opinion tonight. So
We're going to do our absolute best to not get you in trouble.
Absolutely. Perfect.
We appreciate
Famous
it.
last words.
Oh, Trevor, no, don't do that. We appreciate all the people that are fans of the podcast and have supported us. So we don't want to get you in trouble by talking to us. So
okay.
We're going to try a new thing this time around. And Maddie and Trevor are going to help me. This is going to be really cheesy and people are going to make fun of me for it. But it's going to be a rapid response, 5-question little spiel we're going to do just to get things rolling, to see how quick you are on your feet. As an air traffic controller, I would hope that you've got good mental abilities to just think on your feet and come up with the right responses. So that's what we're going to do in the segment that we're going to start calling Launch the Alert 5. All right, you ready?
Let's do this.
All right. Best aviation movie quote.
Guess I'm not fast anymore.
I don't recognize that quote.
Yep. No, not a good one. I know it's a fast 5, but no, there's a lot of aviation movies out there that, similar to Top Gun. Not a huge fan of, I'm kind of like when it comes to actual like Air Force One, that one's kind of like one of my top 5, maybe even top 3, just because it's like the way they made it. It's like kind of reminds me of Star Wars, obviously, for some reasons, but similar actors and stuff like that. But I don't know if I have an exact favorite quote that I can think of. I'm gonna have to come back to that one on the quote. I might have to think something up.
All right. Well, I'm going to allow you to take a pass on this one. Come back to it at the end. I should have set a timer. This is our first time doing this, so there's going to be a grace period for us too. Next time we'll have to set a timer. Question 2. Name 5 states that are in the Midwest. Go.
Iowa, Minnesota, both Dakotas, and Nebraska.
That checks. Trevor, did that check out?
Apparently you missed one.
No, he was only supposed to name 5. He doesn't have to name all of them.
Wisconsin counts too, but they're a bunch of cheeseheads.
Yeah, that's fair. Question 3. Favorite aircraft.
My fiance just asked me this the other day, and I had to say the P-51 as a quick response because, it won the war in Europe. But I do really like the B-25 too, especially with the one that's up in the cities too, Miss Mitchell. That one's really cool to see flying around too. Those two are probably, if I had to pick between the two of them, I'd do the P-51. But the P-25 is a very, very close second.
Question 4. With you, appropriate or not?
No. Don't ever say it. Just clear and concise phraseology on frequency always, but don't be afraid to have a little bit of fun once in a while with your SIAs.
Love it. Question 5. You're in a hurricane in a C-130. Are you team ditch or team parachute? I know you listen to the episodes, so you know what I'm talking about.
I'm team keep going because you're with the hurricane hunters.
So team ditch, right? So, you're going to stick it out with the aircraft right into the ocean if you have to.
It's a C-130, and Trevor knows that it'll never crash because it's a C-130. But
not true, but they're built like tanks, but even tanks have limitations.
That's a great way of putting it.
I don't know if you guys went to Oshkosh last year, but the demonstration with the C-130s and the stuff last year, probably one of my favorite things. I've been to Oshkosh 3 times, and that was probably my favorite thing. Like seeing how they actually like evac people, like a downed aircraft or whatever, and finding it and using all the C-130s out of like the Carolinas and stuff with all the fancy equipment on the tails and stuff too. It was really cool. C-130 is a very awesome airplane. I gotta look up this quote really quick because I have the quote in my head, but I gotta find it.
You're cheating.
I gotta find it.
I was just gonna say we're gonna come back to question number 1, but now you're looking it up on the internet, which I feel is cheating. Do we have an official...
sure I did that on the first episode I was on here.
All right, so do we have an official
ruling? You asked me a quote question,
from...
and then I had to look it up.
All right, so Maddie's in favor. Trevor, do you have an official ruling on whether this is going to be allowed or not?
Yeah, why not? It's our podcast. Why not let it just happen?
The podcast is open note.
Yeah, it's open note. Did you find it?
Yeah, the reason I thought of Air Force One is because it's from that one. Get off my plane.
No, that was I was waiting for that actually. That's a good one. All right, that's a good one.
Great movie.
Well, now that we're all warmed up, do you want to start the questions?
I suppose.
Let's dive into it.
Oh, Jack, I was just going to ask. So you have your private pilot, and I don't know when you did that. Was that recently or?
So, background info: I did UND from 2013 to 2016.
Okay.
And the first summer after my freshman year, so summer of 2014 is when I finished it up.
Okay.
So the spring semester, they had like this course at UND called Intro to Flight, and you just had to do that one or just get all of your private pilot. at UND. So I did an intro to it's like 7 flight lessons, and it was just like kind of an intro to like, hey, this is this side of the radio, you know. So
Sure.
their way of getting you a little bit experience on the pilot side while still, you know, going to school for ATC. So I did that course in the spring of 14, and then I finished it up. I think it was August 20th. So I went hard,
Nice.
nose to the grindstone all summer, and got it done that summer of 2014. So it's not required
Awesome.
for UND's degree for ATC, but I did it on the side after kind of all my friends were doing it, you know, that I made in the dorms and stuff, that aviation side. And then I'm like, all my friends have my license, and I've wanted this since I was like a 6th grader. So pretty cool. So
So do you still fly?
yeah, once in a
Regularly? Am I
while. My fiance loves it when I take her up. So it's kind of one of those things,
Aw.
like just flying around and going. I don't like when sometimes I'll go up and just sit in the pattern for an hour, or sometimes I'll go and take her out. And we actually last winter I took her in a 152 up to Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, which is about an hour and a half flight for steak dinner, except the heater wasn't working very well and it was winter. So she was miserable, but
Oh no.
it was a good steak dinner.
Oh, good.
152s do not have good heaters if you guys fly them very much.
I've heard.
I-
I've experienced.
I
My
don't,
old
and I'm
150
okay not knowing.
I will say my old 150 had great heaters in it. Had a great heater in it.
So yeah, I actually wanted to be an airline pilot up until
Ooh.
probably like the beginning of junior year of high school, until they started really getting hard into, you know, like, what do you want to do after high school, you know, stuff. I'm like, well, duh, I've always wanted to be a pilot. And my dad, how I kind of got into aviation is kind of funny. My mom works for the National Weather Service, so I kind of enjoyed her meteorology episode really well. So she was the breadwinner when we grew up in South Dakota. There's a good blooper for you. South Dakota, whatever that is.
Nobody knows what that is either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Midwest though. So
Yep.
can't really avoid
Midwest.
that one. So on the like, he kind of did some side jobs growing up. They met up at UND back in '91. So I just like went there because it was a really good college for ATC. That just so happened to be where my parents met too. So kind of cool.
Aw.
He's from California and she's from Hibbing. So completely different sides of the world, you know, so basically. So he threw bags for Masaba Airlines out of Aberdeen, South Dakota. And back in the day, and once in a while he would just take me out there, and you know, those good old red Saab 340s that Masaba had in the early 2000s. And I remember going up there as a little kid, like, you know, the big red plane, you know, as a little kid. Now that's kind of what got me into the pilot side of things. So that was really cool growing up, and then like having his flight benefits through the airline too, you know, going up through that and be able to, you know, like, hey, let's go visit California family, you know, this week or whatever, and ride on an airplane for free, you know, kind of thing. So it was kind of really cool experience growing up. And now it's been kind of dangerous again because the woman that I'm marrying has flight benefits and put me on her flight benefits. So I'm like tempted to, you know, just run to Amsterdam for a weekend once in a while. But
So, in your experiences with other controllers, about how many are pilots versus non-pilots?
Ooh, that's a good question.
when I got to Waterloo, I was one of 2, and we were both, the other one was still a trainee. I mean, this is just Waterloo too. There's so many other places that have a lot of experienced guys, but a lot of like in the past, a lot of the universities required ATC to do the pilot program as well. So I have a couple coworkers that have their license, but haven't been current for 10 years because they got it for the college degree, you know, had fun with it. But, you know, some people don't have as much ambition as others to keep it up, but you never know. So, but right now I'm one of 2 that are active, I believe. And the other one is a trainee that just got back from Oklahoma City. So Waterloo, I don't know if you guys have a good time for going into all of this, but Waterloo has a tower and an approach control, and they're in the same building, and you have to learn both of them in order to stay there, basically, as a certified controller. So you start out with tower 99% of the time, and then you go to Oklahoma City where the academy is for tower. Then when you finish that up, you go back for the radar portion, and then you come back and train on approach control at Waterloo. And then after you're, you know, deemed good enough, you certify there, and then you're good to go. So during the day, I mean, I work both almost every day when I work. So it's pretty fun.
Jack, can you tell us a little bit about your ATC experience, like the different facilities and types of facilities that you worked through?
So believe it or not, this is my only one so far. I got out of college in 2016. I got into the academy. I applied, I think, once or twice in college, but I applied right away. As soon as I graduated, I was more considered a little more qualified than just off the street, working at McDonald's or flight school or whatever. And got in summer of 2017. I got down to Oklahoma City for 3 months of training. And if you pass, you get a list based on where you finished, like score wise, in your evaluations. So I picked Iowa for my spot, and I started training there. And that winter, I finished up Tower in August of 2018, and then they sent me down to Oklahoma again. That I was actually there for Thanksgiving 2018, so we got to have like a big Friendsgiving that year. So I was down there doing the radar class that they require for the FAA, and then I got back to Iowa and finished up approach control training in, I think it was August of 2019. So it was like, and pretty much that's kind of how it goes with some of the slower facilities, like where I'm at. It's kind of like a summer based thing. Like they want to see you be able to work, like all the student pilot practice approaches mixed together, and keep everybody from scrape the paint, kind of thing. So yeah, that's just kind of how I'm at. And I've been in Iowa since October of 2017. So I'm coming up on 5 years up this fall. And then I got selected just recently to go over to Michigan to work at Detroit Approach Control. And that'll be probably another 3 years or so of training over there. And so that's kind of like a big change, going from, Eastern Iowa to super TRACON kind of situation. It's hard to explain the pay scale, but they're like almost 3 times, probably more than that, busier than us as far as, pay goes, but not a huge deal on that part. But it'll be fun. Be a kind of a up and coming experience for me and my fiance. Moving to a bigger city, and she gets to live in a city where they have a base for crews for SkyWest. So she gets to instead of right now she kind of commutes via car or airplane wherever sometimes, but mostly car. So living in the same town as where you're working for both of us is going to be kind of a nice change of pace for us before we kind of get ready for our wedding next fall too. So you can imagine on how both of us are doing, planning a move in the fall and a wedding next fall. So it's kind of been
you don't
crazy,
have anything going on at all.
The nice thing about
been pretty crazy. But
the nice thing about Detroit is you get to do a lot of climb vias.
yeah, and the nice thing about approach control is a lot of the clearance delivery stuff is done on ground. So
Yeah.
once they depart, all the departure stuff, like I'll be learning obviously once I get over there exactly how everything works. But a lot of the stuff with the SIDS is done at the airport, and then you just kind of get them up and out and give them to center, and then dodge everybody that's in their way, I guess. But with arrivals, and they have different types of sectors too, called jets and satellites and arrival too.
Yep.
So you kind of get everything, one big flowing organism basically that is the Class Bravo airport. So it's going to be really, really fun. And I kind of, when I put in for some places, I put in for places that would be one where my fiance could be a crew base. So like Detroit and Minneapolis and Denver, I kind of applied for. And then Detroit needed people bad enough where I got selected there. And I decided, this will be a really good change of pace for both of us. And it'll be a fun challenge ATC wise too. So kind of, going from, Waterloo by the book is, basic radar service, like even compared to Class Charlie, not all the, VFRs or vector to the tower and thing. It's kind of like, cowboy ATC for some people, you just kind of do with what you got sometimes, but the Class Bravo stuff is going to be pretty fun to learn.
Sure.
So I'm looking forward to it.
So are assignments kind of like the military where like, so you'd selected Iowa as an option. Is that like you kind of fill out a dream sheet of where you'd want to go and they select based on
they
needs,
used to back in the day. I mean, they still ask what region you want to live in, like east, west, or central of the U.S. They have service areas is what how the FAA does it. But back in the day, they used to say, pick your top 3 states and we'll do our best, So now I pick obviously central as my number one. And when we got our list to pick from, there were a couple central airports that I got to choose from. I think the other two were Lincoln and Wichita, believe it or not. And then I think the next closest ones were like Fort Smith, Arkansas, and Baton Rouge. I'm just like,
Oh wow.
I like South food, but I don't know if I could live in that humidity and the hurricanes and stuff. So I'm like, I'm happy with Iowa. So it worked out pretty good. So
Good.
And the transfers, is that the same way then? So you say you're transitioning to Detroit.
It's really complicated. A lot of ATC. So they're not too happy with how the transfer process is set up, because a lot of times it seems to favor the bigger places, because a lot of times, so that how the FAA does it is you can't really move unless, one, the place you want to go needs people, and two, your facility that you're at right now is healthily staffed to let you leave, and still operate. That's kind of, you think of how basic that is, but they kind of have expanded it a little bit to be the point of, there's a lot of bigger facilities that are able to swap people, and some of these smaller facilities like us kind of almost have to put in, I think I put in 17 applications total for facilities to go to. And basically it was like, you look at the priority list close to the time to where they're going to have the panel to pick people. And it's like, I put in for, places I could see be like on our qualifications that I talked about earlier. And then whoever like goes down the list on, there's kind of an algorithm they run. It's kind of complicated, but Detroit just ended up being the place that needed people when I was available, ready on their list to pick from. So it worked out for us, but I know we've had a lot of people in the past from our facilities, like, even just, we've had people from, Florida and stuff come to Waterloo, Iowa, because basically, the FAA or whoever is called and said, hey, we need this place needs people, right now. That's just kind of how like things have progressed, into, staff as needed kind of situation. So
Jack, what is training like for ATC?
Oh,
like, I know
boy.
I had a friend. Yeah,
I knew
I
that
know.
question was going to come up.
Of course, it's an area that not a lot of pilots know about for sure.
Yeah.
Like, we know it's a rigorous process. Like, I know I have a friend that washed out. He's just like, nope, not for me. I'll stick to flying. And I'm like, wow, how bad is it?
Yeah.
So for all those who are curious out there, we would love to know just a little bit about how crazy it really is.
Yeah. So for me, coming into a new facility, pretty green, as they say, you kind of have to, almost, they say, like, how kids nowadays, like, only speak when spoken to kind of situation. Not as bad, it's gotten a lot better from the past, but
it's hard to give instructions that way, isn't it? Like,
I mean, as far as off the radio, with your trainers, I suppose. So you guys have had a situation, like where you heard the one controller that you spoke earlier, like saying Academy ground on accident, at Flying Cloud. A lot of times you guys have probably heard, like maybe on flight following somewhere or coming into whatever airport or tower, and you hear two voices, it's like one person talks and then someone else talks over them, like, because they said something stupid or whatever like that. That a lot of time is not always stupid. I know that's kind of judgmental, but we have trainers for a reason, like how it works is when you're certified to work a position, as soon as, I think it's a year later, you're eligible to teach on it, as long as you get the teaching course, paperwork done or whatever. So you go through that process. So you always have somebody that's certified to work that position actually working it. And then in the training process, they have somebody that's not certified yet plug in with them and, work the airplanes while they watch. And if they see something that they're not happy with, they can step in and say something, or, you can say like, hey, you should do this, kind of situation. Like there's a lot of classroom stuff too. Like you have to memorize a lot of stuff. Like obviously you can't work a tower if you don't know what taxiways are which and stuff like that. You can't work ground control, like turn left. Crap, what is that one again? Can't do that kind of thing. So you got to be book ready before you can really be, radio ready kind of situation. So, and sometimes, there's stuff that if you don't use it for a while, you forget it. And then you have to keep on it too while you're doing it. So the magical 7110.65 is always your best friend too, for studying too, if you need to. So that's kind of like the ATC Bible. So it's kind of like the far aim for you guys,
See, that's kind of interesting, and I'm glad you kind of brought that up, because a lot of people, once they get their tickets,
Mhm.
Outside of their flight review, I mean, how often do people actually go into the far aim? How
Right.
often do people actually review, kind of ask questions,
Mhm.
what if this, what if that? For I know for me, and I can speak from experience, is that before I, really got into the flying thing, I probably went to the far aim maybe once or twice a year.
Right.
And
Right.
that was okay. Did I
If you
do
even had the
something?
right one, like this 2022 one, and like, oh, here's my 2016 one.
Yep.
Yep.
What could have possibly changed?
Yeah.
The FAA recently announced their next hiring bid process for next month?
Yep.
What can you tell any aspiring ATCs out there about what that means?
So this is the fun time of year. I think they're planning on doing once or twice a year now of off the street hiring on usajobs.gov. So that's your magical website for getting a profile made and a resume uploaded and getting everything current. So June 24th to June 27th are the days that it's open. And so there's minimum requirements. You have to be under the age of 30 by the time that the 27th comes around. The FAA likes to get a full 20 years out of you for your pension. You have to be a U.S. citizen. So their big requirement is either a 4-year degree in anything. Mine was obviously ATC, so it made me a little bit more qualified. Or 3 years of progressive work experience, which can be pretty much anything. But basically, what they mean by that is 3 years in a row at a job of 40 hours a week. So 3 years in a row at the same job that's full time. So they want to, you to prove that you're reliable. So, or you can do a mix of those two. You can do 2 years of school and 1 year of work experience, or 2 years of work. I don't know if you can do 2 years of work experience, 1 year of school, but basically kind of a combination of the two. So to get you to show that you're a good employee and can be a good employee for the FAA. So yeah, if you want to be a ATC for the FAA and you want to apply off the street as a no experience, they call it an off the street bid or no experience bid, basically. June 24th to June 27th. They'll have that posted on usajobs.gov.
I suppose we could put something in the show notes, huh?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I think I saw a link earlier. I think fa.gov/level up is a website that they've made to kind of explain everything, like what it means to be a controller for the FAA, and like good resources to look up at as far as why a lot of the controllers in the FAA are like, proud to do what they do and what they do and stuff too.
So being a pilot yourself, do you see an advantage in your air traffic control career to having that pilot/aviation experience from that side of things?
Yeah, I would say so. And I'd say it kind of like and just from like being a controller as a pilot and hearing some of the things that some people say sometimes, like, why did they do this? And then like, I kind of have to say like, hey, they were probably like thinking this or whatever, you meant this or whatever. And they kind of like, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Kind of like having like a little bit, like just a private pilot too. I don't even have like, airline experience or anything like that. But I know there's some controllers out there that have switched sides, like been an airline pilot and like, I want to go do ATC now, kind of situation thing. So kind of second midlife crisis, not quite midlife crisis, but quarter life crisis, kind of career change, whatever we want to call it. But yeah, having the experience is really like, there's a lot of working at a small tower too, it kind of like seeing a lot of the stuff that we have an FBO with 4 airplanes for flight instruction basically. And you can rent them too once you do a rental checkout, but seeing and hearing a lot of things that, student pilots say with instructors on board and stuff. And it's like, okay, like that makes more sense. I have 2 college universities within a 3-hour drive that have flight schools too, that come over and do practice approaches and other like stuff like that. And there's plenty of other airplanes based in small towns around that I see the call sign pop. I'm like, oh, there's the plane from, Mason City. Oh, there's a plane from Cedar Rapids, whatever, like you kind of start to recognize stuff once you work it long enough. But, just knowing and kind of expecting what they want and what they're going to say, as a pilot myself, it's kind of gives you a little bit of a push to kind of prepare a little bit better too. And kind of it's almost like more of an empathy thing too, like, hey, I'm a pilot too. Like I've had a situation where, first student cross country flight following supposed to be going to an airport to the west, and he's going north. It's like, hey, just a quick question for you. Like, hey, you know exactly where you're headed right now? Is like your compass and your heading indicator lined up? And he's like, yeah, it's not. I'll fix that real quick. And then he turns right at the airport he's supposed to go to. He's like, like just little things like that. Having a little bit of knowledge even about just being a private pilot kind of helps with understanding, like, the student. A lot of training in our area of the state of Iowa. So seeing like what student pilots are trying to do and move forward with that and kind of helping them a little bit. It's kind of nice sometimes to just having the background information.
You kind of segued very nicely into one of our other listeners. And actually she was on our podcast before, Captain L. She actually has a very good question regarding student pilots. She's like, she asked, when a student pilot is on a solo, what advice do you have to give to them to get over their nerves talking to ATC? That's always a big one for when you're not flying in a tower airport like Mankato. That's
a big one. And I know this has been a very big topic lately. I've had a lot of people pushing, like, when are the tower tours coming back? When are the tower tours coming back? Like, guys, we really, really, really want you back. Like, we want you to see our side of things, so you don't think of us as big, evil, crazy monsters, because we're not. We're people too. We want to, it's a ATC service. We want to give you your service so you can land and be happy and have a great, awesome day, stuff like that. So if you're a student pilot and you're flying, across your first cross country, whatever, don't be afraid to tell us, like, hey, student pilot, VFR flight following, going to, Fort Dodge, Iowa, whatever, that's a bell in our ear, like that says, talk slower, enunciate a little better, like, help you out, like there's, plenty of airlines out there. You can talk like you're an auctioneer and they understand everything that you say. Those student pilots are not going to understand you at all because they're so focused on, scanning their instruments and flying level flight and listening on the radio and stuff like that. And I definitely remember those days of doing those cross countries, trying to understand what the heck Minneapolis Center was trying to tell me what to do back in the day. So shout out to them. They're great too. So, but yeah, student pilots, don't be afraid to just explain what you want to do so that we know what you want to do, first of all, and we aren't surprised if you do something other than what we're expecting to. Like, if you want to come and do a touch and go, don't say you're going to come in and just land, like kind of that thing, like explain, like, hey, we want to do a touch and go and then go to our next airport. Like, cool, we can do that. We can accommodate that for you. No problem. Don't be afraid to be humble and vulnerable or any of that stuff. And don't let you're basically, you hear that a lot. Don't let your pride get in front of your aviating kind of situation. So
sure. You hear a lot about like people with that mic fright, they call it, where they're too afraid they're going to sound like an idiot over the radio, or so they kind of tense up on it. And I guess I used my example from a number of episodes ago that I didn't care for flying into uncontrolled airports because I was so used to talking to ATC that, I'm going to get on this CTAF and sound like an idiot. Just because I didn't know, I wasn't just, fluid with the phraseology. And it's just a matter of going out and practicing that and getting comfortable with it. I think it's probably the same thing, the opposite direction too, where you've got people flying out of these uncontrolled airports, and now you have to go talk to a tower. It's like, no, it's the scariest thing in the world. But you raised a good point where end of the day, the other end of the radio is just other people.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think that you're going to sound dumb, just listen to some of my controlling. I don't sound the smartest on frequency either. I'm in the tower. We're not all perfect. I've had times where I've literally, keyed up the radio and gone to say something and then unkeyed and like, what in the world was I saying? Like, that's not what I meant at all. And then re-key up and explain, like, no, I want you to do this instead. Just kidding. Stuff like that, So not everyone, sometimes before that first cup of coffee in the morning, not everyone's, always ready to say exactly what they mean, but, that's how it goes.
Everyone says dumb things on the radio. It doesn't matter who you are. I've heard airline pilots say really stupid things on the radio, and I'm like, it's like actually kind of comforting. It's just like everybody screws up. It's fine.
Yep.
There you go.
Top 10 things pilots should quit saying. Number 1, with you.
Or learned it. Oh God. Don't even get me started.
What is your opinion on with you? No, I need to know.
I'm not even Catholic, and I want to say, and also with you. There's been a couple of times where I went to go key up the mic and say, I'm like, nope, I'm not gonna do it. Not gonna do it.
You're gonna, funny. What's gonna end up happening is you're gonna end up getting a, you're gonna get a remark that says, mark the tape. or something like that.
And it's probably going to be Trevor saying it. All right.
I don't know. It could be better than meowing on 121.5.
Yeah, that happens too much.
You're on guard.
And then
You're
the
on guard.
then all the oh yeah stuff comes out, and that's just nonstop
God.
too.
God.
Yeah.
Progressively louder Sias.
There's yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of the loudest. I like your guys' ending. I like the loudest SIA you can do whenever. Sometimes I even initiate it if I know if it's a cool pilot. Then I'm like talking to some RJ pilot, and I go, contact center, have a good day. They're like, see ya, Zap! I'm like, I like go scramble for my mic quick and go Zap! Really loud. I'm like, a lot of times I like, switch them to center, and I'm just kind of like looking at something else or whatever and listening for their readback, of the right frequency or whatever. And then they give it back. I'm like, oh crap, I wasn't ready. So it's funny, but
I hope they heard me.
I love a good SIA. Love a good
Yes.
So I want to touch on another listener question that came up that I think you started to answer, but I just want to come back to it.
Mhm.
So our buddy Badger Pilot, who is also a fan of the podcasts and did one of our blooper intros, says, I'd love to take a tour sometime. Is that something towers or center approach have started to do again? He kind of alluded to it, but just I figured I'd ask just for him again.
Right. So a lot of things with the COVID restrictions, like the airlines have gotten rid of the masks in airplanes finally too, and that was really nice being able to go fly and not have to wear a mask a couple of weeks ago. But the restrictions just haven't quite been approved to get lifted yet for the FAA facilities. So once we hear back, on all that stuff, that'll be definitely put out. Like, hey, whenever you guys want a tour, that's a thing for sure. So we enjoy having the student pilots up. So they, I know I have one CFI in my hometown here that has just been like, my students are so scared to talk. Like I'm trying to teach, and I'm like, I tell them to say something and I have to almost say it for them every time. They're just like so scared to just like say something to us. And I'm just like, I feel for them too, like I would have loved, I was in the middle of South Dakota, nowhere basically when I was flight training. I went up to Fargo, for my 10 tower landings, and didn't even do a tour. And I was just kind of, like, yeah, I had, I guess, just mindset, like, yeah, I trust them. I'll be fine. I'll just do my tower landings and get out of there, kind of thing. So, but we're looking forward to getting tours back in the building for sure, so we can help these students actually be able to, talk to us and explain what they want instead of, just like, like say like 2 or 3 words and we're like, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like kind of like, like over our end on the radio, not knowing they like to see us, as like the power. Like I almost feel like sometimes we're viewed as like, cops or anything like that. Like, like we're seen as like, oh, enforcers. Like, no, we're trying to work with you and we're trying to give you a service, so talk to us and we'll help you out. So
I think that's a really good point. I think that there are a lot of people that see you as like you are the word controller, like, oh, they're in control of the skies, not necessarily as that service that's there to help you. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, definitely. So as soon as tours are back, we'll get the word out. So
I got to tour the Flying Cloud Tower during the air show.
Ooh, cool.
I knew a gal whose husband was one of the controllers. He's not there anymore, but yeah, I got to. And that was like an eye-opening experience. This was like last summer, so I'm almost an MEI, so I've been an instructor for over a year now. I had never been in a tower ever, and finally went up, and I was like, oh, it makes sense.
Yeah,
like I could never do it, but at least what you see, like I understand like how the process works. You get your little slip of paper, and
right.
That's you, and it's neat. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I really think what you guys do is awesome.
I got to tour Grand Forks. I got to tour Grand Forks a couple times and learned after getting up there that, I saw one of UND's CFIs go up there and I'm like, oh, hey, what are you doing up here? I haven't seen you in a while. Oh, my student's soloing. Like the CFIs will go up there when their student is soloing once in a while, just like get to see the controllers talk to them. And if like something goes like, obviously, hopefully nothing goes wrong, but they're up there if they need something, so it's almost nice to have for the controllers up there too, to, have the actual person that's been teaching them the stuff like, hey, what's like, they can look at them like, what's going on right now? Like, what is he doing? Stuff like that, whatever. But yeah, I've been up in Flying Clouds too. That's pretty nice tower. I think they're due for a new one for sure, because it's kind of looking a little older, but I've been over to I've been to Crystal and St. Paul and Minneapolis too, and I've been to Anoka because they're contract. I never asked them for a tour, but the cities has a good group of great controllers that all work together pretty well. So it's pretty fun. If you guys are feeling a little generous, Crystal and St. Paul can use your love too. Flying Cloud isn't the only tower up there. So
Oh yeah, I've got a good buddy of mine. He was he actually, I served with him in the military, and he's a controller up at Crystal.
Mhm.
Then he moved out to California, and then he moved back. I don't know if he's still at Crystal or if he moved over to Tracon, but
I want to ask another fan question.
oh boy.
What are some best practices for obtaining a Bravo clearance for sightseeing or overflying a busy airport? And that's from Alex on the Instagram machine.
Okay. So my brain immediately went to like Minneapolis. So let's say you want to like do a little sightseeing, maybe, like Target Field area when there's not a game or whatever like that. Like just explain to them. Like I've seen Bravo clearances given to Cessnas. They just want to fly over MSP. Like, hey, we want to go from, Lakeville to Anoka. We don't want to go around. We want to go right over MSP, and they're like, yeah, go right over the top of whatever, at or above whatever altitude, just like explain yourself, like there's a lot of times pilots are like, like we get back to, the scared Mike kind of situation.
Right.
It's like, hey, I'd like a Bravo clearance because I'd like to fly this route and whatever altitude you want, I guess. But, and, there's a lot of bigger places. Like I know I've seen on YouTube and Instagram and stuff like San Francisco, the big, the famous Bay tour, like over the Golden Gate Bridge and Alcatraz and all that stuff. Like just explain, to your approach controller, like, hey, I want to do this. And they're like, give me 10 minutes. I'll get you exactly what you need. Like stuff like that. Like just be concise, like, and if there's airplanes in the way, they'll say no until they can do it, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just that's kind of the big thing for me is, just like explain what you want. And if we can do it for you, then we'll do it for you as best as we can. Like we're not here to say, no, go away, leave us alone, especially, those big scary Bravo airports and approach controllers that sound busier than all heck on the frequency. And you're just trying to do a little sightseeing or whatever.
And that's been my experience too, where typically if I'm clear and just tell them what I want to do, if they're able to accommodate it, they will.
Oh yeah.
That long cross country I just did for my commercial rating, someone had asked me like, did you go through the Bravo? I'm like, yeah, I went through the Bravo. I'm like you just went? I'm like, I asked. I was clearer than the Bravo.
Yeah.
Oh, like this kind of novice pilot that didn't. They're like, oh, that's the Bravo. You can't go in the Bravo. It was just kind of a mind-boggling thing that you don't just have to fly around it. You can ask to go through it. I'm like, yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, I feel like
just do it. You should ask.
I have a feeling, I wouldn't know this for sure, that a lot of the flight schools in the cities area is probably like, the big bad Bravo, don't even try asking because they're not going to give it to you kind of situation. But it's, it depends on it. If they can't accommodate it, there's like, straight up unable, Bravo clearance, remain clear of the Bravo. Then you just got to have plan B. It's just what it comes down to.
What do you wish you could tell other pilots from an ATC perspective?
That's a good one. Oh man,
we asked the hard questions here.
We've covered so much good stuff on this too tonight. And I think the big thing for me and the big thing I preach too, whenever I can talk to pilots around here, is don't be afraid to just ask and try not to, I know if you can't do a tower tour, then that's fine too, but try not to think of us as the big mean people and more of like, your friend that's holding your hand. We have the bigger picture on our scope. We can see everything that's going on. We're going to keep you safe, and keep you out of harm's way. Yeah. As a controller, with a little bit of, I've only got maybe like 130 hours or whatever in single engine too, just as a private pilot, and just kind of, use your best judgment when it comes to talking to ATC about, what you really want to do, and explain yourself, and don't be afraid of us. That's the big thing for me.
I like what you said about the bigger picture too. The one flight where I had an instrument failure, I was on an instrument flight plan and I lost my vacuum pump. I just come out of IMC. I recognized something wasn't right with my gauges, and I'm like, oh yeah, the vacuum pump failed. So I descended below the cloud deck and I just told ATC, hey, I'm going to hang out down here. I lost my vacuum pump. And they came back a couple minutes later, and there's a couple back and forth questions between myself and the controller. And then a different controller was on, saying, hey, we've got some people that are a little worried about your course of flight here. Do you maybe want to consider putting it down somewhere? And it was that bigger picture thing of, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't know what they see ahead of me. I know what I see on ForeFlight. I know what I got briefed before I left as far as the ceilings. And yeah, it was an IFR flight, but I'm like, oh, I could go under the clouds and be just fine. But the conditions were deteriorating, and they were seeing things that I wasn't, and they had that bigger picture for me. And like, yeah, I'll divert to Park Rapids or wherever I went.
Sure.
But it was, again, that bigger picture that I didn't have that they were able to provide that was hugely beneficial. I could have wound up in a very uncomfortable position very quickly.
Very true. And I love having, we have a couple of computers up in the tower cab and even in the approach control whenever it's open, that we can pull up, like, aviationweather.gov and see all the METARs along your route of flight. Like, hey, they're showing 700 overcast, they're at 1200 overcast, like explaining everything like along, like, hey, I know you want to do this, but like, it's really hard for ATC to kind of suggest that kind of thing. Like, hey, would you rather land than keep going? Like, kind of thing. It's not a huge, like, a normal thing for us to really say, because, pilot in command eventually, has the judgment, I guess, whatever. But just kind of, painting the picture, for you to make the best decision. That's my big thing, like, don't hide information that could, save your life for sure. So
yeah, and that's how I took it too. Of like, these guys have a different viewpoint than I do.
True.
Let's land, let's reevaluate. And when it's safe to go VFR again, we'll just go VFR on the way back.
There you go.
And that's ultimately what we ended up doing. We waited it out on the ground for a little bit, looked at the weather. I called up I was a fairly inexperienced pilot. I have my certificate and my instrument rating, but when it came to, instrument flight, I called up my instructor and go, what do you think? Here's my plan to maybe get back. We're going to, wait a little bit, and here's the path I'm going to take with airports within this vicinity. I've mapped out my different waypoints I want to take, and I eventually safely made the flight back, and I flew VFR, but again, the weather conditions changed again. So,
right. But
yeah, they're there to help us.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, Jack, are you ready?
Oh boy.
You ready for the question of the night? This is my favorite part. What is your aviation unpopular opinion?
I know you guys have had a
top one. Yeah.
You guys have had a really,
probably...
really good couple of ones these last few episodes, and I've really enjoyed listening to them. So, as a pilot, my biggest fears are heights and falling. So they don't combine well when going up in an airplane. But it does not make you cool to want to jump out of an airplane. Whether it is skydiving or in the mountains, Trevor Jacob, or Red Bull. I think skydiving is cool. I would never do it personally, but so wording it the way I worded it was kind of brash, but but getting out of a perfectly good airplane, in my opinion, is probably, unless it's like, D-Day, that kind of situation, it's, to me, it's just, by choice, obviously, and sometimes it's not the best choice.
Yeah, I have a friend who keeps bugging me, when are you gonna become a jump pilot? She's a skydiving instructor.
Cool.
I'm like, no, because as soon as I take that job, you're gonna make me skydive, and I will not skydive.
I'm right there with you. I hate the feeling of falling in my stomach, and I feel like I can never actually jump out of an airplane willingly.
I am the same exact way, and I have a fear of falling too. Like, roller coasters are terrifying, and here I am, a pilot. love Valley Fair. Can't go on the big ones though. Nope. Same. Yep. I'll go on the little baby ones. I'm a little baby.
Yep. Exactly. But yeah, I guess that's kind of aviation related because it brings in a lot of current events. But stay in your airplane.
Hey,
absolutely.
The more inflammatory, the better.
Perfect.
So, I want to thank Jack for a couple of things. One, for being a great fan of the podcast. We appreciate you listening, and to all of our episodes in their entirety and not falling asleep. It's a hell of an accomplishment. So we thank you for that. And we really appreciate your time and sitting down with us and talking to us about ATC.
Absolutely.
Last little while here. So appreciate your insight and your thoughts.
For sure. It's fun giving the different perspective for things.
So another cool conversation with someone from the Midwest aviation community. Want to thank Jack Parkin once again for coming on, and I apologize if the name Waterloo Jack sticks. The good news is you're moving to Detroit. Maybe you can get a cooler nickname like Detroit Jack. It sounds like a really cool drink. That's a joke I stole from Trevor, so I'm going to give him credit for it.
Thank goodness. I never thought I'd get something credited like that before.
Well, it was a good idea.
Being funny?
That is.
Best of luck to Jack in his endeavors in Detroit.
Hey, Maddie,
Hey, Trevor.
why don't you ask Jim what we have going on for next episode?
Hey, Jim, what do we have going on for next episode?
I'm so glad that you asked. Thank you so much for asking, Trevor, via Maddie. We are going to have a couple from the Instagram flying tandem, Tomas and Nicole. This is a couple that share an Instagram page as they share their adventures flying across the United States through video and imagery on Instagram, YouTube, all sorts of different social media platforms. So excited to hear their story, how they got their start with Instagram, and where they hope to take their social media content.
Oh, sounds like fun. I'm excited.
Me too. Well, thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Flying Midwest Podcast. If you want to give us some show ideas, you can reach out to us on any of our social media or flyingmidwestpodcast@gmail.com.
Until next time.
Until next time.
See ya!
See ya.
Hell yes!
Flagship 536, contact Minneapolis Center 132.35 today.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Flying Midwest Podcast. Until next time, podcast service terminated, squawk VFR, frequency change approved. Good day.
So by evidence tonight, as you can see, controllers aren't always perfect, and we try and do our best and accommodate with everything, but pilots can't always get everything what they want. And as you can see, here are all the bloopers that we have for you, and thanks for having me on the show. See ya! Close it out. Appreciate you guys having on me, and here are the bloopers. See ya!
Having on you?
What did I say?
He said, I appreciate you having on me.
Hey,
Yeah, I did
it
say that.
works. It works.
Having me on, having on me. Yeah. I can
Those are
start
two
that.
very different things, my friend.
Yeah, I need to do that, so.
Yeah, unpopular opinion. Nobody actually wants me here. I just start talking and then they can't make
Oh,
me stop.
come on.
Nice.
But it's 10:05, Trevor. I've had 2 drinks and I'm getting very sleepy.
Take a swig. There you go. There you go.
Does this make me more pleasant now?
I don't know. It's just I've got lots of really good stories, like this one.
Witnesses at O'Hare International Airport described the scene Thursday morning as quote unquote scary, but not panicked.
My mother scolded me for dropping the F-bomb like a lot.
Like,
If I was your mother, I would scold you too.
Hi guys, I'm Trevor. How are you guys doing?
welcome to the Creepy Midwest Podcast. That's the show Trevor's putting on tonight. Maddie and I would like to introduce you to the Flying Midwest Podcast that we'll be putting on.
On Thursday, Boeing said that it would move its headquarters from
Chicago.
We're going great here.
When Flight 2874 from San Diego,
Diego Garcia.
San Diego.
My parents listen to it, if that
Okay.
helps.
That helps.
Even though my mom has no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, well,
Thanks, Mom.
we also don't know what we're talking about, but here we are.
True. I got now. See, now I have to say it in my head first before I say it out my mouth, because else I'm gonna pull a Jim and just spit out garbage.
Where's the
Yes,
You
mute
have something
Molly,
Jack
cool.
I'm
button?
not the butt of a joke.
Where's the mute Jack button? Mute Jack. Go.
Maddie doesn't care about your questions on Facebook. It's all about Maddie. That's how this works.
It is decided.
What you doing in there? Who are those bozos he's talking to?
He looks like he's
Breaking my
recording a
shades.
podcast. Gross. You know what's
Banana.
sad? You're trying to show me a picture of this pretty girl, and I went, look, it's a bonanza. You and your pancakes again.
Pave a paradise and put in a parking lot. You know,
As long as they're serving pancakes there, Maddie doesn't care.
I've got lots of really good stories, like this one.